drive. Boink. Okay, so that's there. That's there. It's really exciting me looking down at my screen trying to figure out how to use this. All right. There you are. Okay. So 18 of you so far, out about half of you have done that, done the mind assignment or the mindless assignment. So if you haven't done it yet, and there's a bunch of you haven't, I'll give you the answers to what I'm talking about or what I'm looking for in this particular thing, and show you how we're going to try to connect the material to the little video clips. So first of all, it's so the first. What is the first video of?
It's it's the video of your son when he's 8 months old.
Yeah. It's baby Caleb. Okay. And baby Caleb he's 8 months old. What is the state of his mind? I'm going to go back over here. What's the state of his mind? So can we see what his thoughts are?
Yeah. You can see how they changed.
Yeah, does he like the keys?
Yeah, he loves the keys.
He likes the keys. How do we know he likes the keys for people who haven't watched it?
Because he cried when you took them away.
So, but he also makes happy baby noises when I give him the keys.
Yeah.
And what does he do with the keys when I give him the keys?
He plays with it.
Yeah, shake, 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 shake. And he goes, ooh. He's cute as a bug. Okay, he's still cute, just taller. Okay, so we can tell by the state of his mind by studying his behavior. Does he have memory?
No. Or yes. I don't know.
Right, one of the two. Wait, let me put up the chat up here. Hold on. Okay. So, does he have a memory?
Yeah, because he feels lost when the keys disappear.
Yeah, he knows when he doesn't have the keys. So he knows the keys exist in the planet, even if he doesn't have them. So what I did was I hid the keys. So when you hide something, okay, like I evidently hid parts of my wife's lunch today. When you hide them, what are you actually doing?
To him, like the object just disappears, like it doesn't exist anymore almost.
No, they exist. They exist because he's crying because he doesn't have them.
But he knows it's gone. Like,
how do you know he knows it's gone?
Because he's upset about it.
Well, but you're inferring a lot in his little consciousness. But what's interesting about this 8-month-old, I'm going to scroll back over here. So there's a bunch of different ideas. This is actually called object permanence. If you take a child development class, it's called object permanence. But what they used to say back a long time ago was that the kid just didn't know that they existed. Things only exist in their immediate present. But we know that an 8-month-old has a memory. There's a really fun video where they show kids, a mom eating stuff. And so the mom's got a bowl of broccoli and a bowl of goldfish crackers. And the mom's eating it. And every time she takes a bite of the broccoli, she goes, broccoli. And every time she takes a bite of the goldfish, she goes, bleh, goldfish. Then they ask the baby, give the mom what she wants. The baby looks at the mom, picks up the broccoli and hands it to her. So the little tiny baby can understand and really get what's going on. Pretty amazingly, actually. But here's something that's fascinating. When I hide something, if I change the world, what do you have to do to find what I hide?
Look for it.
You have to look for it, right?
Mhm.
How do you know where to look for a hidden object? Well, it's really stupid, actually, if you think about this. What's the easiest way to look for a hidden object?
Stay think.
Say that again?
Stay think.
Okay, so you could, if you want to look for something, you have to move around, right? Like, does anybody remember, like, in a Christian tradition, they have this thing called Easter. And in Easter, there's all sorts of religious stuff, but for little people, it's a lot about hiding Easter eggs. And this year we were all on lockdown during Easter, so it was actually funny that we hid Easter eggs for our kids just because we were bored. So my son and daughter had to go look for Easter eggs, and it was a challenge because we had 32 eggs and they had to find all 32. How did they go about looking for them? So think about this. How would two teenagers go look for Easter eggs?
Think about how your parents would have hid them.
Yeah. If you think about the perspective of someone else, then you can find out where they are hidden better. The first place my son went, because he knows me, is he went around by the trash cans. Because he knows that I will hide places in disgusting things. Or for him, wherever there's a big spider web, I'm going to put an Easter egg because he's really afraid of spiders. You should watch him levitate whenever he walks into a spider web. It's really fun to watch. So he looked around for spider webs because he knows that I will hide an egg somewhere where there's spider webs because I'm kind of evil. So if my little baby child, 8 months old, can he see the world from my perspective?
He can if he thinks about it.
He can't. 8-month-old doesn't have mind. They have memory, but they can only see things from their own perspective. The only perspective they have is now. That was Garbley's. Put it in the chat. So the 8-month-old, Gavin said, change your surroundings. The 8-month-old does not understand that they can change their surroundings. And so JC, I hope I'm saying it correctly, but she also said to get some help. Babies always look to their parents for help. Thank you. And kids always look to their parents for help, because why did the baby just start crying and doesn't do anything?
Because it doesn't know how to like look at you for help yet.
That's the only way it knows how to ask for help. Like a lot of people's little babies, they look at the mom and they just put their arms up like this, like, pick me up, I need help. And they can't do anything about it, but they know that they can get help. So it's interesting to look at their little baby brains and look at their little baby minds, because their perspective is all about now. I need help. But something happens at 9 months. 8 months, you hide the keys. And am I like being sneaky and hiding the keys, or am I literally putting the blanket over him in front of him?
Putting the blanket over him in front of him.
Yeah, just literally dropping the blanket right in front of him. And what's funny, I think it's funny, it's kind of mean actually, he doesn't have the ability to reach out, grab the blanket, and pull it over. He just looks at me like, well, now what am I going to do? Because the only perspective he has is now. A 9-month-old, if you happen to have, a couple people have year-old children in here, a 9-month-old will look at this and look at you like, you're an idiot. And what will they do?
Pull the
Take the
blanket
blanket off and grab the keys.
Yeah, no, like without even blinking. And there's like, they get up one morning and all of a sudden they look around the world and they go, oh. And all of a sudden, as opposed to just sitting on the floor, I've lost the kids many times around the house, where all of a sudden you hear this clunk, like, okay, where's the kid? And if you ever have a 9-month-old, they love to explore because all of a sudden their brain says, there's more than what I can see now. And they become little scientists. There's lots of pictures of our little babies exploring the house. A couple times my daughter went out the back door and, we had a bunch of brick steps off the back of the house. And, a couple times she almost tumbled straight down it because she knows that she can go out in the backyard and explore things. She doesn't understand the consequences of crawling headfirst down brick stairs. My wife caught her once by the back of the diaper, just right as about to teeter over down the stairs. But does anybody have a baby that where you have a lot of stairs in the house?
Yeah, I do.
Does your kid go downstairs backwards?
No.
No, not yet. Once they take a header once or twice, they go really quickly. They run toward the stairs, they flip around, and then they slide down them backwards. Because they learn, ow. Okay. So the second one's a little bit more complicated. The second video is a little bit more complicated. And the second video has to do with belief. So I gave my son a box. And the box is of crayons. And I ask him, what do you know now? So I ask him, what's in the box? And he says,
Crayon.
Crayon.
crayons. Right, crayons. Then I show him that he has a false belief. I show him that there's actually not crayons in the box, it's actually popsicle sticks. Okay, so now that there's popsicle sticks, he knows there's popsicle sticks in the box. I'm gonna write this down. If you ask a 2-year-old this question, if you do this with a 2-year-old say, what's in this box of crayons? And they say, well, crayons. They open it up and they say, oh, there's not crayons on here, and they laugh. Then you close the box and show them the box, and you ask them, what did you think? What did you think? The child, a 2-year-old, will say, I thought there were popsicle sticks in there. Because a 2-year-old, what they know now is what they've always known. If anybody happens to have a 2-year-old, they're a pain in the butt. Not in a bad way, but they're very self-assured. So like the worst thing for a 2-year-old is tied shoes. The 2-year-old doesn't know that they can't tie their shoes because they think they can tie their shoes, therefore they can tie their shoes. But they can't tie their shoes. And then you hear the 2-year-old say, no, me do it. And then they get extremely frustrated that they can't do it because they think they can, therefore they can, but they can't. And it's difficult. They're not terrible. They're terrific. Yeah, that's why they're called the terrible twos. Because the kid wants a piece of candy and you say no. And the kid looks at you like you're a giant moron. Because no, I want some candy. You don't understand what I'm saying. And the reason is because they only know what they know now. Okay. So something happens at age 3. So if you watch the video, when you see my son, I go, what did you think? He goes, I thought there were, and he starts making the popsicle stick face. But he goes, no, I thought there were crayons there. And he looks all smug and smart. So he passed the first step of perspective. He knows that his mind changes. He is aware of his mind, his perspective. He knows his perspective has changed. Okay, here's the difficult part. The third video is about other minds. if he knows something, other people must know it too. So when I ask him, what would mom thinks in the popsicle stick box, or what's in the crayon box, what is he going to say?
Exactly what he thinks.
Exactly what he thinks. He cannot think from somebody else's perspective.
Didn't he actually think from her perspective because he thought that she had heard him say that there's popsicles in it?
So I did this test before with lots of other kids when aka mom wasn't in the room. And they've done the same thing. Did you see his mind get blown when she said crayons?
Yeah.
He's like, whoa, this is amazing. And so, yeah, you point that's a flaw in my little science program here, because we did this with my daughter, and I did this with all the neighbor kids, just to test this at around age 3, and then you do it again around age 4. What's interesting is all the younger siblings get this faster than older siblings.
Hey,
So younger siblings have something that older siblings don't have. Where do you learn the mind from? Other people. You learn about the mind through other people. So if you happen to have 2 or 3 siblings, the youngest child in the family will grow mind faster. They seem smarter when they're younger because they mentally age faster. It doesn't mean they're actually smarter. It's just they get a head start on everybody else. And of course, being the younger child, we're obviously smarter. I'm sorry. Okay. So the other experiment has a lot to do with this. Empathy. Can somebody tell me what empathy is? The TED Talk?
So relating to somebody else's feelings.
Yeah.
For them.
So it's a prediction of others' emotions. It's not just imitation of feelings. It's not just imitation of someone's feelings. It's a prediction of others' emotions. So when you empathize with someone, you can predict how they're going to feel. And the stronger your empathy, the stronger that you feel how they're going to feel. Like the reason why I'm upset about my leaving the snacks out for my wife is that she's got a very busy day and she works out very hard, and not having snacks when you work out really hard really sucks. It makes your day really miserable. So I can empathize with the fact that she needs these snacks that I didn't put in her lunch. She's got a lot of other food in there, so she'll be okay, but I can predict that she's going to be sad that she doesn't have these snacks. And so because I care a lot about her, I feel bad that she doesn't have those snacks. If I just didn't care, I would go, oh well, and then move on without my day. It's the same thing as like when, that's why I have my email always open on my computer, because if someone can't get into the meeting, I want to make sure I have my email, and I realize that my email is not open. So my computer's not going boing. Here, hold on. It's going to be open in a second though, so I don't feel too bad. I already sent that out. Okay, good. Okay, so I feel like I care about you, and I care about the students in my class, and it really sucks with this online environment, because it's very hard to empathize with people in this situation. That's why it's really important that you do the discussion things, so I get to know your voice, not just your garbled Wally voice, but the way that you're thinking comes through in your writing. And that's one way that you can get empathy with someone, is by writing back and forth to them. Interesting. Anyway. Whew. So why stick people in a brain scanner?
measure the activity of different centers in their brain
But why?
so that we can get a gauge to base other people off of.
Well, this is actually kind of funny. I don't know if it's funny, but to me, it's pretty interesting. So, psychology as a science, the history of psych, it started with physiology. Well, technically, it started with philosophy. If you want to go back to the original psychology, it was all a bunch of old dead philosophers, a bunch of Greek dudes, Socrates, Plato, and those kind of things. Descartes did something different. Again, you can, if you care about this stuff, it's not that important for understanding psychology. But a lot of psychology started with this idea of philosophy. But then Descartes pointed to a spot in the brain and he said, that is consciousness. Boink. Which I thought it's really interesting that he pointed to a spot in the brain saying that is consciousness. Now, back in Descartes' time, hey Google, when was Descartes alive?
On the website Britannica.com, they say, René Descartes, born March 31st, 1596.
Okay, Google, thanks. Okay, I forgot the date already. 15 something? So how do you think brain surgery was in the 1500s?
Not great.
Probably not great. I'm going to suggest that, you died from the common cold back then. So whatever. So the way they studied the brain was they found dead people and took apart their skull and looked at their brain. So it wasn't exactly a very good science. So the history of psych really was just philosophy up until the 1800s, where these folks discovered something called neurons. In the 1800s, Hermann von Helmholtz, if you care, discovered that these little cells in our brain generate electrical signals. There's some old scientists that figured out that our electrical signals cause our muscles to twitch, and that if you give people chemicals that causes their muscles to twitch, if there's a chemical that you can get called camphor, that if you eat too much camphor, it causes seizures. And so they figured out that electrical activity is how the body works. And then in the 1800s, they figured out that electrical activity is how your brain works. And ever since then, they have been working on this. The structure of the mind. What is the structure of the mind? What is the mind made from? This is where a lot of psychology started. And this is what that researcher in that experiment, so when you get to go watch that TED Talk, she is trying to find the structure of empathy, the physical structure of empathy. Do you think they're ever going to figure out the actual structure of the mind? Why not?
Do you mean like what consciousness is, or the actual like centers of the brain and what's responsible for what?
What's the difference?
I mean, one's physical and then the other one could be something else that we just have, like we're putting words onto it, but that's just one understanding of it. Yeah,
so I like to use, so that's pretty heavy duty stuff right there. So for a lot of people who are looking at it, go, what the hell is he talking about? There's a physical structure of our brain. And the physical structure of our brain is where a lot of psychologists, we call them structuralists, is what they study. And so we'll talk about the different schools of psychology a little bit, but this is the foundation of the science part of psychology, where psychology is trying to figure out what is the element, what is the part that makes up the mind. But as Cal said very astutely, just because you know how something works, like I like a car as a good example of this. A car can be a bunch of mechanical things and you could know the structure of a car. But what gives a car meaning? What gives a car purpose?
You do.
So let me put this up here really quickly. Go to here and go to there and go to there and go here. Oops, any van. Oh, my van knows. There she is. This is, we call her the van because, well, she's a van. And so this thing has been very well abused in my household. Okay, and so let's get that go away. Let's see, we take it. This is a typical summer version of the van. You wonder why we had to have the springs replaced. I don't know why. The poor thing has been, you know, we've used it quite a bit. That was a good one. Okay, and the poor thing, you know, there's times we've gone skiing and transporting couches. Oh, that's when the van was young. Look, the back end's not squatty back then. Oh well. So even though the van is a series of parts, what makes it what it is?
The memories.
It's how you use it. So the history of psychology started with all the structure of the mind. What is the structure? What are the parts of the mind? But then the function. Functional psychology is how we use the mind. And psychology is held between these two things, the structuralists and the functionalists. And the structuralists and functionalists are what makes the study of this thing called the mind. Remember, the mind is perspective. The mind is this wonderful word. I'm going to write it up here. Can somebody tell me what bias is?
Being inclined towards a certain perception or perspective.
Well, so what else? So it's being inclined to one perspective. So do you judge people?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a bias a lot of times is a prediction before you get any data. Yeah, we are constantly judging things. My wife will assume that I just don't care, is why I didn't put her snacks in there. For me, I can use the defense that I was extremely busy this morning, but I do care a lot. It's just, it's hard for me to remember all the details when I'm thinking about other stuff. And I need to not think about other stuff when I'm packing her lunch, but I can't help it. Okay. So the question is that the prediction, your bias is prediction. And so if you're making a prediction that is, wait, is your prediction in the structure or in the function?
The function.
So what about, right, TPJ? If you go watch that video, look for the right temporal parietal junction. Thank you, Elizabeth. this right temporal parietal junction is where you make predictions about other people's emotions. So this little part, oh, sorry, wait, right there. That little part of the brain is where you make predictions about people's emotions. If I anesthetize that spot with a donut on a stick, zap, the person makes worse predictions about how that person is feeling. So the structuralists are looking for the parts that do what this is. I like, somebody said the driver for the van or for the car. The driver does change the function of the vehicle. My friend Lisa she was dating this, douchebag named Chris for a long time. Anyway, it's not important. He had this really awesome M3, a BMW, really cool car. I don't drink very much, so we went out, we were in Palm Springs, and he got hammered, so I got to drive his M3 home. And so I'm a big car geek. And so, of course, we're sitting in the parking lot. And so I, of course, hold the traction button down for count of 5. And what does that do? Does anybody know BMWs?
So traction control off.
Turns the traction control off and puts it into insane sport mode. So it opens up magic inside the stupid thing. And we went around some corners psychotically. And afterwards, he's looking at, the next morning, he's like, I had no idea my car could do that. He had never even touched the traction control button. Okay. Hit the M button and then hold the traction control, put your foot on the brake, put your foot on the gas, floor it, and then let your foot off it's called launch control. Holy camole, it's amazing. Okay, sorry. Please don't do that around a school or a public area. Do it out in Hamul. Anyway, sorry, Hamulians, that was me. Okay, we had a BMW 3 Series for about a year and a half, and so fun. My wife didn't like it though. So we got rid of it and got her giant squishy potato car now. She has a Murano and she loves it, but it's a squishy potato car. No fun. Okay. So my son really misses the BMW too, because he and I were idiots in it. Stupid. At the bottom of wearing, where wearing hits the 8. That's the perfect place to use launch control. It's a big, long uphill on-ramp. Sorry. Okay. So for me being an idiot, is that structure or function?
Function?
Well, it turns out that the structure, there's a part of your brain called the orbital prefrontal cortex. And the orbital prefrontal cortex helps you evaluate choices.
Oh, okay.
And so we can say I'm going to give you the sad answer. The reality is it's always both. It's always both. As you go through and look at the chapter, and as you go through and look at this, why we need to care about history, we have to understand that the structuralists, the structure of the mind is a really important thing. But at the same time, is the function of the mind is also a really important thing. And so I like to think about, I use workout analogies a lot too. We can look at the anatomy of the muscles and we can look at the anatomy of the joints and know how to lift weights. But if you're not moving properly, if you're not doing the exercises in the proper way, the muscles don't work right. We do the exercises and the workouts that we do are what's called functional fitness. Functional fitness means you get stronger. We're not necessarily trying to get giant arms or giant chest or big traps so I can't move my head. It's the goal of it is to become strong and to stay strong. So we do a lot of very strange exercises, things like called Turkish get-ups and kettlebell swings, and we flip big tires over and hit things with sledgehammers. Pretty fun. Okay, and that's what's called functional fitness, because what you're doing is using your whole body to work to get stronger overall, versus physically working on very specific muscle groups like a bodybuilder would do. My wife does a lot of bodybuilder kind of exercises. And so she will spend all day working on doing a bunch of lunges and you know, it's leg day. So she does every possible connection of leg day that she can do. By looking at the weights this morning, it was an upper body day for her this morning because the rubber bands are all attached to things where you do moving different rubber bands and different muscles. I would rather just, yesterday I did squats, deadlifts, and a bunch of abs. And it's not about working on specific muscles, it's working about getting strong. And my quads are very sore today. So it feels good and angry at the same time. Whew. All right, so now, okay, so in the history of psychology, we have these two schools, structure and function. But you have to remember that the structure and function are both just as important. Where would therapy be under?
Function.
Yeah, good. Therapy is under function. What about medicine, like psychiatry, like Prozac?
Both.
That's under structure. If you go to a psychiatrist, they are structuralists. If you go to a psychologist, they are functionalist. Now, in order to get to fix yourself of mental disease or mental disorders and trauma in your life, sometimes you need both. One or the other doesn't necessarily fix things. It can, but it's just you need both. Why on earth, like I twisted my ankle a couple weeks ago. So one of the things that I can do as a functionalist is stretch a lot and try and ice it and keep it going better. What could I do structurally? Medicine. I could take Aleve. Aleve, we're a big Aleve family. We used to use a lot of ibuprofen, but I get allergic reactions to it. They tell you if you get the COVID, don't take ibuprofen because it can cause respiratory distress. So if I take ibuprofen for more than 2 or 3 days, I start getting asthma. So we take Aleve. Aleve, the only problem with Aleve, it's great stuff, except it's really hard on your stomach. Anyway, I generally don't take anything. I very rarely will take any sort of medicine. And I stretch and use ice and ignore things a lot. Denial is a great way to get better. Just, it'll go away. Until you're old and your shoulder does this. I'll get a new one later. Okay, now. Doesn't seem to affect anything. All right. So what about in developmental psychology? Okay, so I'm gonna draw a line here. I'm gonna erase this real quick. Hold on. So this is clinical psychology. Developmental psychology. It's a really fun course that I also teach. What is the function of developmental psychology? How would we study babies and development and change through the function? What did I do with my kid?
Almost like play games with them.
Yeah. Now, if you start Googling around, the false belief test is a behavioral test that we do. It's a function. Behavior is a function of the mind. The MRI is the structure of the developing brain. So the same researcher that did that false belief test did the same thing with infants. And if anybody's if you want to Google something, it's actually pretty cool. they put dogs in an MRI machine. Hold on, let me show you. This might become very inappropriate real quick, but whatever. Boink. Okay. So that's a nice junkyard dog. I love those brindle dogs. No, I don't want to sign up, but thank you. So they train dogs to put their heads in fMRI machines. And what they did is they had the dogs sitting in the fMRI machines. I love that picture. I'm a big dog person. And then they had the dog look at their human versus look at a different human. And when the dog looked at their human versus a different human, they could determine if the dog really did love their human or not. It's a really good use of science, let me tell you. And the first dog that they successfully did this was with a Boston Terrier. And the Boston Terrier did love its owner. When they showed it pictures of its owner versus pictures of other people, I don't like the word owner, negative to me. Their companion versus a non-companiative person, the dog would make different brain activity when they saw the person associated with areas of love and attraction, not sort of humping your leg attraction. That's different. That's usually aggression. Anyway, but it's funny though, but some dogs don't love their owners. There are some dogs that look at their owner and have the same reaction as looking at a water bottle. Guess what about cats? They can't train the cat to sit still long enough to do this. Because cats really just don't care. Anyway, sorry. Okay. If you want a cat that cares about you, get a neutered male cat. A neutered male cat is a cat that will get it neutered when it's early. Don't let it start spraying before it gets neutered. But they will bond with people and become dependent upon you. And a neutered male cat becomes like your best friend. Most cats will just use you for food and entertainment and then abandon you as soon as better food or entertainment shows up. But anyway, if you get a cat when it's a kitten, it's much more likely to be bonded to you. Cat behavioral psychology is really fun. Okay, so the areas of psych that I like, I really like studying developmental psych. I like watching these baby brains grow up, especially my poor teenage brains. The teenage brains are really fascinating because they're changing every day. And it's so fun to look at the focus of the mind with a teenager. Because the function is very different. Anybody know what the main function of being a punk teenager is?
Survival.
It's not survival. To take your parents' money. Yeah, well, okay, so hormones have a lot to do with it. For a teen, I'm going to write prefrontal cortex here. That's what's growing the most. That's the structure of a teen. But the hormones, a lot of teens, the function of teens is to become independent, to think that your parents are giant morons, it's really entertaining, but the Disney Channel, if you look at the way that they portray adults, it's really that adults are these giant morons. If I know it's not Disney, but all adults seem like Spencer from iCarly. Large irrational things that lumber about. And most of the Disney Channel parents, the kids are the ones that are the heroes, that are in charge, that are the smart ones. And the parents are just dawdling around through the world stupidly trying to get stuff done. And even on shows, lab rats, okay? The super genius guy that solves problems is still a giant moron, okay? And I like a lot of those Disney shows. So, but the idea of the prefrontal cortex is that that's the part of your brain where you grow up to make predictions about the future. So this is why a teen has a really hard time trying to predict the future. And that's why 14-year-olds don't like eat before they go to volleyball practice, not to mention anybody in my family yesterday. And then he gets home and he's got a stomach ache and he's super tired. I'm like, did you eat before practice? No. Like, why not? I don't know. If I have a hard workout, I make sure I have a good plan for my food, because I know if I work out really hard and I don't eat, I will get sick because I can think into the future. Strange. Okay. My daughter had an appointment with a counselor, so I hear her stomping around. We'll see if she got her classes that she wants to. Okay. So last thing with this. So we could go through all the different areas of psychology, all the different areas of psych, and they all have the same thing. Some people study the structure, some people study the function. It's always both. So here's an important question. Why is it important to study history? Who cares?
So we don't make the same mistakes.
We do.
But I mean, that's like things from history, like learn from others, you know?
It's that one of the reasons I asked you about your culture is a lot of it's not just to see how things started. It's to look at how things change. How have you changed since you were young? How has your family changed over the generations? How has our humanness changed? It's sad to know that we are pretty much the same creatures that were bopping about during the time of Descartes and Socrates. I was reading I got kind of down a rabbit hole of I can't say the word, philosophers. And there's a couple of these old philosophers that basically described modern psychology very well in the 1600s. There's one, he was one of the early Christian philosophers, and I forget, begins with an E, I can't remember what his name is now. But he talked about this, about the principles of being human, and it's exactly the same as what we call humanistic psychology now. And a lot of the self-help books that people write now, they wrote the same junk down years and years and years ago. It hasn't changed. Humans are the same things. The same junk that's happening in our world today with racism and discrimination and violence is the same stuff that's been happening throughout history. And so, but what's interesting about it is just because we know more, does it change who we are?
You mean like physically or from personality perspective or?
Yes.
Just all of it? I mean,
yeah, so the structure of humans hasn't changed. We're the same humans that were bopping around 10,000 years ago. The function of us in society really hasn't changed. But what's interesting is that now that we're understanding more, the biggest thing is things change a lot faster than they have in the past. That's the biggest difference between us and back in the old days. Things happen significantly faster. How long would it have taken this plague to roll across the world, 200 years ago? "200 years ago would not have rolled across fast. Because it would take months, not months, but it takes a couple weeks to sail across every ocean. And by the time you got across a couple oceans, the people who were sick would have either plagued the entire ship and then gotten done, and then everybody in the ship either got sick or done, or they were over it by the time they got to where they were going. So it would have been localized.
Flying wasn't a thing either.
Say it again?
flying wasn't a thing either.
Yeah, 200 years ago, we got no airplanes. Okay, and it's people were bopping all over the place and spreading all sorts of different diseases, but they spread relatively slowly. And airplanes now have just completely changed everything. The internet has changed everything, how things work. Okay, so now, last thing here. So we need to study history. You have to know what happened in the past. Because in order to understand how things change, we have to look at something called science. Okay, so what science is, okay, I'm going to play a video clip here. I think I put this on here. Let me go to the discussion really quickly. That's my research methods. That's learning, and that's my other class. Hold on, let me put this up here. So I want to make sure I put this on here before. Come on. Okay, that's the history stuff. Okay, so that's different. This is the one I wanted. Okay. Okay, so now we got to go to this video. Whoa, boy, that's terrible spelling. Knows what I'm talking about, though. Okay, so I'm going to mute this really quickly. Unmute that. All right, can you hear me? Well, my sound's turned off on here, so we'll see. Sorry. All right, hold on. All right. Oh, jeez. I hate technology. The sound was too glitchy. Yeah. Okay. I will post a link to that in Canvas, and you can watch it afterwards. Basically, what that guy is. Let me go back to screen share. Sorry, I don't want that. Stop. We'll get back there. What that guy does is that guy finds bad ideas. And he sciences bad ideas. Like we mentioned this before, the QAnon stuff. So our president basically acknowledged that, oh, it sounds like a good idea yesterday on a press conference. And what's interesting about it is that if I claim that I make these very crazy claims about these cannibals that are trying to take over the world and that there is one savior to save us all from them, can I back that up with any science?
No. I mean, you could, but it would be false.
Well, what's interesting about it is it's not. Okay, so what is science, first of all? I'm trying to think of a right way to say this, because what is science? Well, what does it mean to research something? This is how a lot of these conspiracy theories go. I see something, I go, wow, I've noticed that whenever there's clouds in the west, there's more rats. Therefore, the clouds in the west are drawing the rats. And I noticed that. And then so I post it on Instagram. Someone sees my comment on Instagram or Twitter and reposts it. And then someone else reposts my comment that someone else commented on. And all of a sudden it goes viral, but it's based on one person's slightly crazy observation. It seems real because if the more you look for it, the more you find it. Yeah. So Bridget just said correlation doesn't mean causation. Okay, so good science, number one, is an observation. And we use the word correlation is basically when two variables occur in similar time and space. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're causal relationships. There could be a cause between them, but the cause could be very distant. So I can give a bad example of that in just a minute. Oh boy, that would have killed somebody here. Sorry about that. Whenever you make an observation, you have to collect data. Numbers. What was the data that they were collecting for the false belief test?
They were seeing what states of mind they were at.
By asking them about the state of their mind and then talking to them about, or then measuring their brains during this test. So that's the numbers. The numbers, the color of the dot changes based on the amount of activity. That is what we call objective. And like, even though they're only showing 2 kids, those kids represent a series of things. And what's interesting about this is that when you have this objective data, real data, so like if I say, well, there's a restaurant in New Jersey, was it? That has a bunch of kids that are trapped being sold as sex slaves. Anybody remember this one? Pizzagate. So, oh geez, I'll let you Google that one on your own. But this poor pizza restaurant had no idea that it was circulating around. And the guy standing at the pizza restaurant, all of a sudden, this gentleman with a rifle had driven up from South Carolina, North Carolina, up to New Jersey. And with the rifle was pointing it at the guy. He goes, "You need to let the kids go." And it was this very strange, bizarre conspiracy theory that Hillary Clinton was keeping kids hostage and selling them for sex slaves to raise money for the Democratic Party. And so this person got so worked up for it, they went to the restaurant with a rifle and threatened the person out behind the counter to let the people go. And it's like, it's one of those things that the data for that is what we call subjective. They heard it online somewhere, not any real observational data, that someone saw a post online. And so that's non-science. That's what that guy Skeptic does. And I'll post that video link up so you can watch it after class if you want to. Because the sad thing is observations, just observations alone, are always bias. They're biased toward your perspective. If I see, oops, sorry. If I run just for the stupid note, if I run the computer off of the little computer, the drawing and everything else works better. I just got to figure out everything else. Okay. So with observation, just observation, it is always biased. But as soon as you start putting in data, it starts removing bias. What's another really important part? We're getting to the word correlation now. Somebody tell me what a variable is?
Something that would directly affect the experiment.
Yeah. Oops. Forgot my H. So we use the word variables are things that affect change. So I make an observation. Wow, there's clouds in the west. I have more rats. And so what data would I collect to go with my insane rat paranoia? What data would I collect?
How often you see clouds and how often you see rats.
Yeah. Days of clouds or what would be a good measurement of the amount of rats? So I count the number of days of clouds, and then I go out and count the number of rats I see. Why would I have to count the number of rats?
To see like a pattern of how many rats there's gonna be.
Well, if I use the analogy, I am strong, what does that mean?
It means nothing if you don't have anything to compare it to.
I'm not nearly as strong as I used to be. Back when I was a kid, somewhere there's a video of me throwing shot puts and discuses and things back when I weighed 280 pounds. And I was so much stronger then. And it's really kind of depressing. That's one of the sad parts of getting older. When we used to do power cleans, we used to start out with 135. We do a couple sets, stretch, warm up. Then we put on 225. We do a couple more sets, stretch, warm up. And then we start adding weight from there to work out. Same thing with bench press. Now, it's like if I can clean 180, 200 pounds, I'm like, that's like the best day ever. Right on my 50th birthday, I cleaned 200 pounds. It was 202 or something stupid metric, whatever. But I just wanted to see if I could do it, and it was ugly. It wasn't a nice, clean drop. It was wide leg, wobble, wobble, ugly. And it's like, so I still think I am strong, but in order for me to determine whether I'm actually strong or not, I have to look at a number, a comparison. I have to look at something that is objective and something that is real. I can't just say the word. So if I say there's a lot of rats, that is not good data. That is observation. I can count. I set a time, go, count the number of rats that I see in 10 minutes. Around here, it's probably 2 or 3. You see 2 or 3 rats every 10 minutes. Around here, right when the sun goes down, there's a little bit higher rate, but that's what we've been seeing lately. So now if I start trapping them, how do I know if it made a difference?
What do you mean, a difference?
If I start trapping some rats, am I really cutting down the population of rats in the neighborhood? Yeah, JC just said it. The observation changes. And if you're measuring things, the observation changes. You can see a change in the data. But if you just say, wow, I've killed a lot of rats, but I don't see any difference in the number of rats. Well, have you counted the numbers of rats? No, there's a lot. You hear this a lot, especially with politics, especially right now. People say, oh, there's tons of voter fraud with mail. That's an opinion. What does the data say?
The numbers are super low in reality.
Yeah, that the number of voter fraud with mail-in ballots is extremely low. And so it's like, well, wait a second, but the person says, well, there's lots of mail fraud. And then then someone else cites them saying, yeah, there's lots of mail fraud. And by the time it gets to the news, the people are saying, oh, there's tons of mail fraud, but no one's paying attention to the data. How come most of us don't look for things that, well, we don't look at the data?
We don't really care about it.
People are ignorant.
It's not, don't say ignorant. Easy influence, it's hard. Being a good scientist takes a lot of time. My neighbor is a professional scientist. She works at UCSD. Don't say lazy. I get called lazy all the time. I'm definitely not lazy. I am definitely scatterbrained. I'll forget things a lot. Okay. And so it's not because I'm lazy, it's because I get distracted. Okay, I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to some things, but that's not important. So just because you don't look at the data, you don't check for facts. And so careful with the word facts. So this is actually what my stats students are doing today. We're doing this, we're talking about in my statistics class, how to actually do this. And what the exact specific ways that a statistician does to look at data, to understand biases. One of the things that I'm going to use as an example is vaping has increased 231% amongst young people. And so when you see that statistic, you're like, wow, that's quite a bit. Does anybody know why vaping has increased so much? What are the variables?
Yes, people are smoking cigarettes.
Flavor.
That's what it's not advertisement, it's not flavor.
It's not that hard to get a hold of.
It's super easy to get a hold of. Vaping's only been around for a few years. That's really Wally voice you've got there. I can't see who's Wallying. But it's not marketing, it's not advertising. It's the fact that vaping is new. Why has there been such a huge increase? It's pretty obvious. It's not other people. If we compare the numbers to 5 years ago,
Well, there weren't any 5 years ago.
there wasn't any 5 years ago. 0. And now, the vaping is a lot more scary because it doesn't hurt you as much physically as smoking does right away, and it's even more addicting because they can manipulate the nicotine variables. I had one of my students 2 semesters ago suck on his Julie thing in class. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're not in high school. Oh, it's a flash drive. I'm like, well, stop chewing on it then. It's like, whatever. Don't chew on your flash drives either. But like my daughter, the kids were smoking all the time in high school. And they finally put the vape sensors in the bathrooms, which is pretty funny because all you have to do is blow it in your shirt and it doesn't trigger the sensor. Okay, just in case you want to vape at school. But you're at home. Puff away. Okay, anyway, but the idea about it is it's that vaping has a lot of negative consequences. It's not super healthy. It's not super good for you. And it's the same thing as smoking. Everybody knows smoking's bad for them, but until the cost of cigarettes went up, a lot of people smoked. But vapes you can get extremely cheaply. And the trainer at our gym, Meathead Schneer, I caught him going into the local Blade and Glass smoke shop, classy, and he buying vapes. I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, oh, like, moron. Here's someone who's supposed to be a personal trainer and healthy, and he's buying vapes at the local bong shop. Whatever. They've been busted 2 or 3 times for selling other stuff too, but whatever. Okay. That's when you live in a kind of a nice neighborhood. We got lots of massage parlors and got lots of vape stores so you can buy all sorts of things. And a 7-Eleven pretty much every 3rd block. It's a good call. Okay. Whew. Okay, so I'm out of time today. So the next little assignment, there's 2 little things that you have to start looking at. Okay. And again, don't put too much space into them. Don't put too much time into them. But I want you to start thinking about, look at the experiment one. I'm going to close this really quickly. Go to here and go back to here and go to there. So I want you to go, if you go to the home page, hold on. Okay. Oh, good. A bunch more people are doing this. We got one more person did the mindless one. Okay. So on Monday, we're going to have an optional Zoom. I will be here to answer questions. There are 2 discussion things to do. Okay. One of them is fact checking. And it basically goes through exactly what we just did today. And the second one is about history of psych. I will put up in a few minutes the link to the discussion. All right, I got to go run before my next class. I didn't realize I was going too far over. So I go to here. Oops. I just want to stop the recording first. I need glasses. You can run away if you want. Stop. Okay. Bye, everybody. I will try to make it so I cut out a little bit earlier next time.